in order to get there, I had to go through city meetings, planning and zoning, city council, a whole bunch of no's.
You had to do the work.
A bunch of neighbors that were mad and upset that we were trying to do it a certain way. And then I got a response from an attorney with the city that says, okay, if you own it, you can use it however you want. And I was like, well, brilliant. We're just going to have a whole bunch of owners.
All right, welcome to the
Massive and Passive Income Show. I'm Colter.
And I'm Jason. Welcome back. We are excited to be here.
We are excited to be here. We're going to talk about post-deal creativity and what we find after we've actually closed on a property.
Or find right before we close on a property, maybe. I mean, everybody always talks about creativity of, let me turn this phone off. Everybody talks about creativity on getting into a deal with the least amount of money, not using your own money, not using your own credit. But I really want to focus, because Colter and I were just sitting here talking about different deals we've done where we've got into a deal, or maybe right before we bought the deal, we thought that it was going to be this. Like we thought we were going to buy one house, or we thought we were going to buy two houses. We had no idea there was another lot that we could develop. Or maybe we bought a house with a bunch of buildings and didn't realize what we could do with that. But once we went and, talked to somebody, figured out we could do something else with that. So I really want to just kind of hone in on our focus in on every deal. It seems like every deal that I buy, most of them are just single family dwelling. Like it's single family, it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever it may be. But sometimes you get into a deal and there's huge possibilities. And so we want to encourage, Colter and I want to encourage you to never say that can't be done, but look and see how could we make that happen. Yeah. And even though somebody may say, oh, I tried that, you can't do it. Yeah, I love that. It's like when you go to Home Depot and say, hey, do you have any more of these? Nope, they've all been sold out. And then you go back wherever it was at, and there's two sitting there. So I never, not that I don't ever take anybody's word for it, but always just ask why, check it out yourself. Even if somebody says you can't do that, go get the answer yourself from whoever, because maybe he was a jerk and that guy didn't want to work with him. But you go in and say, hey, this is what I want to do. What can I do to make it happen? He may give you a list of things to do. You get it done, and you can do what you want to do with the property.
Yeah. Well, and I'll share an example specifically is there was a clubhouse that we bought, and it went into foreclosure. And part of the reasons why it did is because the guy that owned it before us was trying to sell ownerships or memberships to this clubhouse. Uh-huh. Well, the problem was then the economy crashed, and there's a whole bunch of different factors that happened that made it so that this didn't function in its profitable form.
Yeah.
But the city didn't want it to happen because it was in a residential area, and they said, no, you can't do this, or no, you have to pull out the tennis court and add parking here and do this and this and this. And I approached it after it had been into foreclosure, and I was buying it from the party that owned it and had foreclosed on it. Uh-huh. And I just said, here's my contingency. I have to be able to get X and Y and Z approved through the city in order for me to close on this property. Excuse me. And having done that, it gave me a time frame to go and figure out what the potential of this place actually was. I mean, this is a 4,000 square foot building. Mm-hmm. It has a beautiful pool, a spa, an exercise room, a nice kitchen and serving area, a beautiful tennis court, a nice backyard area. Like all of the features of the place are just awesome.
Yeah.
But it was shut down because there were certain barriers that weren't being broken through. And this clubhouse now, I mean, it is just beautiful. Well, in order to get there, I had to go through city meetings, planning and zoning, city council, a whole bunch of no's.
You had to do the work.
A bunch of neighbors that were mad and upset that we were trying to do it a certain way. And then I got a response from an attorney with the city that says, okay, if you own it, you can use it however you want. And I was like, well, brilliant. We're just going to have a whole bunch of owners.
Yeah, there you go.
We don't need memberships.
So that's why, because it was considered a membership.
It's considered a membership.
But if you guys do a fractional ownership, then it's different.
Then we get to use it 24/7 for its intended purpose of being a pool, a spa, an exercise facility, and we get to use that property how and when we want to simply because of the structure of how we utilize that property. And it's no longer a commercial purpose because it is personally owned by all of us owners.
And that wouldn't have, even that question would have got answered if you wouldn't have gone to him and said, hey, this is what I want to do. How can I make this happen? When somebody may get locked into his original thought was have a clubhouse, have people pay memberships. This is what I'm going to do. Well, if you fit into that box, you have to do X, Y, and Z. Well, if you get rid of that box and change the box, now you don't have to do X, Y, and Z at all. Now it's completely different. I love that. Yeah. And it was just from asking questions.
Asking questions, going through the due diligence process, asking the right people, and then, just breaking through those barriers that are put in front of us and problem solving until the end.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I got a great story. One of the first properties I ever bought, it was it had the potential to be a fourplex. This old boy, he worked in California. He worked for Hollywood, and he was a framer for Hollywood. He worked on a couple Hollywood sets. He worked on Gilligan's Island and worked on Gunsmoke, and built sets and built things. He was a great builder. Anyways, they did a Hollywood buyout for all their backstage work hands or whatever else to get rid of some people so they could retire or whatever else. So he took an early buyout for his retirement after 20 years, came up to Idaho Falls, bought this property, had 7 city lots, and then he'd pull a permit for a concrete pad and he'd build a shop and an apartment on it. And the city was so mad at him. Then he'd go and pull another permit and he'd build another thing. And they're like, you can't do that. Like, what are you doing? Because he could do the plumbing, he could do all the framing, he didn't pull any permits for it. So he built up all this stuff. And then he wanted to make money because they wouldn't give him certificate of occupancy. So then he started putting people's storage in and using it, all these different places for storage. And he was storing people's cars. And he had overbuilt this place. It looked like a mess. It really did. Well, I saw it because I was actually looking for a place in Idaho Falls with a shop. And the reason was because I did an advertisement, lease to own your next home, and we'll help you find a property. So what I would do is, hey, what are you looking for? I know their credit's not very good. They want to buy a house. So I'd advertise out there, find out what they're looking for. I'd go find a house what they're looking for. Then I'd purchase it. Then I'd lease option it to them. And then they'd buy from me a couple of years. It worked awesome. Well, this guy said he needed a shop because he had a business. So I found this place only because I was looking for a place for him that I could buy and he could lease option from me. And it said shop on it. Well, then I got there and I'm like, this place is a freaking mess. But could I make it work and turn it into something awesome? And so I talked to the old boy. His name was Fred. He was a super guy. In fact, I got a couple of stories by him that still puts my hair on the back of my neck, makes it stand up. But anyways, in fact, one of them's crazy. I can't get the burnt image out of my head of this guy. Anyways, so I asked him, I was like,
there will be an episode about Fred. but
so I said, hey, how come you can't do this and do this? And he goes, oh, those people down there at the city, they're a bunch of jerks and they won't let me do anything with this property. I've tried and I'm making some great money here. And I'm like, well, so how much money are you making? And he told me, I'm getting $25 for that place for storage and $25 for this place. And he went through all this stuff. And I'm like, you're not making any money, buddy. And the only reason why he's making money is because he owns it all. Mm-hmm. And he's retired and, whatever else. So I said, look, the place is a mess. And so I'll only give you X amount of dollars for it. That's way too low. And I was like, well, that's my offer. He has never had an offer on it because it's a mess. Nobody knew what to do with it. So I kept offering him the same price. It took me about a month for him to accept my price. As soon as my price was accepted, I went down to the city and I said, look, I want to buy this property. And they're like, you do? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh my gosh, we want somebody else to buy the property because we can't stand that guy. And he's this and he's mean. And he comes down and calls us names and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, so this is what I want to do. All these buildings, what do I have to do to make it so that I can rent these out? And he's like, well, he is so out of compliance with these front yard setbacks and these rear yard setbacks and these side yard setbacks and these aerial setbacks. I mean, not really, but he just overbuilds so much. And I'm like, so what if I brought everything into compliance as far as the setback rules? Oh, that'd be awesome. And I said, okay, then what if I did this and this? And so we made a plan. And he goes, if you do all that, I'll give you a certificate of occupancy and you can rent out those 2 back apartments attached to that shop. I'm like, done. So he's like, but you got to do it in a year. So you got to clean this up and do it in a year. Great. So I went through and we purchased the property. I went down, got the list of stuff that needed to be done, and my boys and I, and one of my friends, we just started cleaning the place up. Mostly, all we had to do was tear stuff down. Because he'd built all the way out to the sidewalk. He had built the buildings like a foot apart from each other, and can't have that. So I just tore down different parts and tore off roofs and cleaned up the part in the alleyway, and we got it approved, and the whole planning and zoning come over, and I signed off on it, and I immediately started cash flow on $1,500 a month.
Wow.
Because my mortgage payment was covered with my main house, and then I could rent those other 3 apartments that were unrentable. Even though the whole time I'm tearing down some of those places he was storing stuff, he's like, "You're ruining the cash flow on this property, buddy. I'm here to tell you you're ruining it." I'm like, "It's okay, Fran." He actually became a pretty good friend. He'd show up all the time, and he'd do different things, but he's probably, I don't know, he had to have been 85 years old when I bought the place, and I probably owned it for 10 years before he passed away. His wife passed away long before that, so it was just him. But anyways, I didn't take his, like, they won't do anything for you. I saw vision in this property, and because of that, I got one of the best cash flowing properties I've ever bought, even to date. Just because I was able to see something most people didn't, and I was willing to do the work, and I was willing to show up with planning and zoning. I was willing to sit down and talk with them and figure out what they needed. And once I gave them what they needed, then they gave me what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, there's an abundance of creativity, and you gotta have vision.
Yeah.
You have to have a certain amount of vision in order to see what the future of the property could be. And then you have to display that, or you have to start to present that vision to other people, whether it's planning and zoning or city council or to the banker or to the title and escrow officer, the real estate agent, your wife, like
that was a big sell too. Yeah.
All of these have to add up to being able to paint the vision of what it is that a property can become. And you have to do that. You have to convince yourself that this is a possibility, because it's you that helps push it across the finish line.
In fact, it's a great story. When I showed up there after I made the offer, I brought my wife in, and she looks the whole place. She gets this look, big eyes. She goes, "Please tell me your vision, because I know you have one." I'm like, I was like, "Give me a second." So I told her all the things. I told her I went down to planning and zoning, told her all the different stuff. And I was like, "We tear this off and this off. We tear this down. We can move this, we move that." And once I was done, she was like, "Man, this sounds awesome. Let's make this happen." But when she showed up, her eyes were like, "What are you wanting to buy? You got to show." She knew I had a vision. She just needed to jump into it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was. And we even did creative financing on that one too. Once I made the offer, I did creative financing with him too. So yeah, that was like my win-win-win. It was a great property. And my in-laws live there, and they're my best tenants. They pay me a year in advance for their portion of the place. In fact, we took the 2 apartments, there were studios, and it turned it into a 1-bedroom, 2-bath big apartment for them to live in. And they get both the shops. In fact, my father-in-law one day, there are 2 big shops in the back. He's like, "Hey, I think you ought to get a storage unit. I'm filling up these shops pretty good." And I'm like, "You mean you should get a storage unit, or I should get a storage unit?" He's like, "Oh, yeah. We can get a storage unit together. That's what I meant. That's what I meant." That's awesome. And I bet you got more, and myself too. I mean, there's just always so many different ways. My dad used to say there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. Not that I've ever skinned one, but there is so many different things that you can do with real estate. And if you just have that tunnel vision that this is all I'm buying, I'm only going to buy 3-bedroom, 1-bath houses, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. They've got to be pretty houses, and that's okay. I mean, if that's what you want and that's what you'll buy, hey, you'll get appreciation, you'll get equity, you'll pay down the mortgage, you'll get rent, you'll get cash flow. But if you're willing to think outside the box, be creative, you can create so much more with the same amount of effort. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's creativity pre-transaction, post-transaction, and how you can turn properties into the vision that you displayed. So
yeah. So and if you need help with vision, ask Colter and I. We'd love to come over and give you some vision.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, we can paint all sorts of pictures. I got stick figures and everything.
It is so true. Sometimes I'm doing an inspection for somebody, they ask me a couple opinions, and 5 minutes later I'm like, "That's probably a lot more than what you wanted to." He's like, "No, that's great, but a lot more than we were even thinking of." He goes, "What if we just took out this wall?" I'm like, "All right, let me just focus on just that one question." Because what if we did this? And I'm like, "We do this, we tear this out, we blow that wall out." I'm going, and they're like, whoa. We just want to know if we can tear this wall out and if the house would fall down. So, well, thanks for tuning in. I think it's a good episode, and don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and let people know that you enjoy this. And if you don't enjoy it, lie and say you enjoy it, and get people to watch us, because we love doing this, and we're gonna do tons more.
Yeah, or scream at us and tell you if you like it. Whatever your fancy is.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in.